Today we're going to learn about the three branches of the government. An important thing to know about this is when the writers of the Constitution were working out details of how to design and build a functioning government, the major concern they had was who was going to have power in the government. We had just got done fighting a war with England to get rid of a king because kings don't have to answer to anyone. They hold ultimate power in their country. The Founding Fathers knew that kings were a bad idea, but what was a good idea? Eventually they came up with the idea that government power should be split among three different groups, or we call them branches, and that no single branch or individual could run the country. Now, built into this idea of three branches is the reality that in order for government to function and to work, these branches would have to compromise and they would have to work with each other. If they didn't do this, very little would get done to serve the citizens. Today we're going to talk about these three branches, what they were called, who they are, and what their responsibilities are. Now, these three branches specifically are called the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches. Now, why in the first place, why even create three branches at all? We've talked a little bit about this, but you need to know that it was created, three branches were created to separate the power of the government. It was to make sure that the government didn't get too powerful, and also to make sure that one branch didn't get more powerful than all the others. The simplest definition of these responsibilities of these three branches is the legislative branch. They're the ones in charge of making the laws. The executive branch, they're in charge of enforcing the laws. And the judicial branch, they determine if the laws that are made are constitutional or not constitutional. Now, there's many other responsibilities, but to keep it the simplest form, that's a good way to remember what those branches do. Now, the legislative branch, this is also called Congress. They are made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, in the Senate, every state, regardless of their size or their population, they get to send two of them. The House of Representatives, that's a lot different. If you live in a very populated state, you're going to get more people representing your state in the House of Representatives because it's based on population. Like, for instance, California has a lot more than, say, North Dakota because there's a lot more people living in California than living in North Dakota, but both those states, both of them, have two senators each. These two houses are responsible for making the laws. Here's a little picture of Congress. Now, the executive branch, quite simply, we just usually think of this as the President of the United States. A lot of responsibilities, but one of the key responsibilities is making sure that the laws that are passed by Congress are followed. The President does not get to make laws. They are responsible for making sure those laws are followed. It is the single most important and powerful position in the government. That's the executive branch. Now, finally, the judicial branch, we usually refer to these people as the Supreme Court. Now, the president, how these people get on the court in the first place is the president gets to nominate a new member, but the president doesn't get to choose whoever they want to have be on the Supreme Court because the Congress ultimately gets to confirm the president's nomination. They do get to serve for life. They never run for re-election. And their primary responsibility is to determine if the laws that are made and that by Congress and that are enforced by the president, if these laws are constitutional or not. If they're not constitutional, those laws get thrown out and Congress has to go back to work again to make a new law that will be constitutional. Now, built in among all these branches is a system called checks and balances. Like I said, no one single branch is ultimately powerful. They get to check each other's power, and that power is balanced out among these three branches. It really is a constant state of conflict and cooperation among these three different branches in order for the government to function properly. Like I said, each branch will battle each other's power, and it is to make sure that no single branch becomes too powerful. So there you go. You learned the basics, the checks and balances in the three branches of the government according to the Constitution.